Reason Marco Pantani didn't like the race route, so this has got to be the everything now for Escartine. He's just got to give it his all. Here we are then up the top towards the top of the Col de Val Laurent. Escartine is now on his own and he's more than a minute ahead of Laurent Dufaux.
An unbelievable style, this Spanish climber. He's all over the machine. He very much reminds me as a former teammate of mine called Robert Albon, who was a great climber but looked absolutely disgusting on a bike. Escartine doesn't look very cool, but I tell you what, he's doing a great job out there.
Well, Dufaux has gone over, Perron has gone over, Ellie has gone over, but this is the yellow jersey of Lance Armstrong with Zuller. The clock is on the right of the screen there. It's not going to be far short of 3 minutes, so he still has a lot of work to do. Of course, he has plenty of time in hand, but he will not want to give time away to a great climber like Escartine.
Well, Armstrong was setting the pace on that climb there. In fact, he's losing time on the Spanish climber because the last time check we had was 2.5 minutes, and there over the summit of the climb, it's 2 minutes 53 seconds. Armstrong is a pretty good descender, so he surely will pick back some time on this descent.
Well, not the same could not be said there of Escartine. He wobbled a bit down that bend, but now he's starting to descend very, look at this now, 80 kilometres an hour as they start to go down what is quite a tortuous descent here. And in fact, Armstrong is taking a lot of chances here and Zuller is having none of it.
Zuller's trying to stay on the back wheel of Lance Armstrong. Armstrong is a very good descender, but in fact, somebody's having a bit of a problem there. This is Nardella who's staying on the road. That's Vladimiro Belli who's gone off the road. And I can tell you one thing, it's a pretty steep drop off to the left-hand side.
Well, he just about got on, just about. Anyway, the roads at least aren't wet, which is thankful, because if this had been the first day into Sestriere, it would have been a different story, I think, there. But now, Escartine on one of the little uphills again now, as he tries to cross to the final climb of the day. You pass through the beautiful little town of Saint-Rory-Soulon before you start the climb up to Piau-Angeli. This rider is trying to do everything now, and there's been a bit of a general regrouping at the back, because on the descent down there, Veronk is a noted descender. He has come back up. And so this is quite a big group. Kurt van Wouw is also here.
Well, it's great to see some Belgian riders at last really riding well in the mountains, with Kurt van der Wouw, Rick Verbrugge being a very good time trialist. It looks as if the Lotto team at last are becoming a competitive team at the Tour de France. Alex Zuller is setting the pace at the front in the white jersey. Armstrong in the yellow is very happy to be there. And once again, though, Phil, because of all these attacks by the Spanish teams, he doesn't have any teammates at all left with him. He's going to have to respond to all of the attacks, which are certainly going to come on this final climb of the day.
Well, they've started it at 2 minutes 27 seconds is the gap to Escartine. As we pass under the banner there with 10 kilometres to go. Laurent Dufaux was the rider we just caught a glimpse of. He has been left by Escartine, and he was the one that launched all the attacks to cause the original split. Escartine followed, but he's paid the price now. As Lance Armstrong again, everything looks to be under control. Alano is behind once more, and at the moment, Escartine, even with his time gains, is still more than 5 minutes behind Armstrong overall.
And if Escartine wants to win the Tour de France, he's going to have to go into the final time trial with at least a 4 to a 5 minute advantage over the man from Texas. That's the kind of time gap that he needs to have going into the final time trial if he hopes to win this year's Tour de France. But you can see Armstrong, Phil, is not worried at all about going to the front of the group and setting the pace. And in fact, the pace he's setting again is putting Alex Zuller into a little bit of difficulty.
Well, they might well see Laurent Dufaux a little bit further up the road if they keep up. There's Andrea Perron. He's been in the break for most of the day, but all of a sudden his legs have gone to rubber and he slides rather rapidly out the back of this group here. There's still Richard Veronk following the wheels at the back and looking for some more points to consolidate his lead in that King of the Mountains jersey.
Armstrong swung off the front there, a little upset, I think, that nobody else is trying to work too hard with him on the front of this group, and he's dropped back into 3rd or 4th place behind Angel Casera, the Spanish champion there in the orange jersey with a yellow band across it. Zuller, though, look at that, Phil. He's keeping a pretty close eye on Armstrong.
He is, and, you know, the way they're riding now, they are actually afraid of Armstrong because he is dictating the pace. He has shown him his enormous strength, that they've had to come back to him, the yellow jersey. He's also hurt Alex Zuller again today, and still Zuller is going to set the pace here. So it's Zuller, Armstrong, Casero, Garcia is the rider in the Vitalicio colours, and also Veronk just behind there.
Well, Richard Virenque is supposed to be the best climber in the Tour de France, but at the moment he's really playing survival. He just seems to be hanging on the back of all of these groups when the road goes up to the summits. Armstrong doesn't feel the pace is hard enough for him, and he comes to the front of the group. But again, you can see he's using a very small gear on the climbs, ticking over quite rapidly, just like Miguel Indurain used to do. But the big difference between Indurain and Lance Armstrong is around about 20 pounds, because Armstrong, since his illness, has dropped down from 80 kilograms to 70 kilograms. And now this is not an attack again, Phil. He's just riding everybody off his wheel.
It is quite amazing at the moment, and once more he's put Alex Zülle in trouble. Zülle did his best to keep the pace up. He's a very courageous bike rider, but he could not take a wheel once Armstrong accelerated, and he slipped straight down the line and out the back. And Armstrong has done likewise at the front now. This man has no limit to his strength here. He's just going clear again.
Well, this not only is going to be good for Armstrong's morale, it's really going to batter the opposition. They will not know how to handle this. The big question about Lance Armstrong before the Tour de France was, will he survive in the big mountains? He went out and rode superbly in the first two time trials, and then he came out to Sestriere, but they didn't know how he was going to handle the Pyrenees. Well, I think once again he's answering the questions of the skeptics.
You're absolutely right. They certainly know now. Alex Zülle here in desperate trouble yet again at the back of the race. This man is not in trouble, but he wants to use his legs and his strength to gain as many seconds as he can over Armstrong, and the result is at the moment he is being limited. His escape has been limited by Armstrong, who is countering the move at the moment.
Well, he had gone up to 2:45 a few moments ago. The last time check we had was 2.5 minutes, and he's really looking in a pain style at the moment. The fact that he's rolling about on the top of the body makes me think that he's still suffering from that knee injury he got in the first week, when in fact banged his hands against the handlebars. Zülle, great ride though, Phil. He's recovered again. He's
got back to that little group, and he's going to find that the yellow jersey has left it. Now, what can he possibly do about that? This looks like Laurent Dufaux here, the man who was originally in the escape, and Armstrong is picking him up, and I think that means there'll be nobody in front except the Spanish fly.
Laurent Dufaux went out again today to try and move himself up high in the overall rankings. This man, one of the disgraced Festina team from last year, had an 8-month ban from the Swiss Federation, but he's fought his way back to the top of the sport. But this man also is trying to fight himself back to the top of the sport. He's the darling of the crowds here, I have to say, despite the fact that the organisers didn't want Richard Virenque here at the Tour de France. The most banners I've seen at the side of the road have all been to encourage the King of the Mountains, Richard Virenque.
There is no doubt he is the most popular French cyclist, Richard Virenque, but right now he's trying to catch up with the most popular American cyclist here, because Lance Armstrong is well known in Italy and in France, and they appreciate what he's doing and where he's come from to be in this position. And Armstrong now has come up behind Laurent Dufaux and has decided to take a quick breather here. I don't know whether he's going to attack him, but we're going to know pretty soon.
They can't say that Lance Armstrong hasn't done proud to the yellow jersey. He's ridden like a true champion. He attacked with the yellow jersey on his shoulders on the stage up to Sestriere, and today he's waited to the bottom of this climb to try and again put time between himself and Alex Zülle. But one thing I don't think he counted on, Phil, was the performance of this man. 111, Fernando Escartin. He still has a 2.5 minute advantage over Armstrong.
Well, despite all of his Tours de France and his high finishes, he's never won a stage yet, but he's just inside 3 kilometres away from that now. And again, Alex Zülle has dug deep into his reserves. He shed everybody, and he's trying to come up here to Richard Virenque. This man is such a courageous bike rider.
He really is doing a great ride. He's pulled himself up to Virenque, and he really is pulling himself back into this bike race. He's been in difficulty 3 or 4 times today, but he's had the courage to fight back. There is Lance Armstrong's group. Angel Casero has got across there to Lance Armstrong as well. Virenque is just about to make contact, and in fact, I reckon Alex Zülle is going to do the same thing. So the man that he wanted to distance has recovered and pulled himself back into the bike race, as has in fact Kurt van der Wouwe, number 86, the Lotto rider, who for me is one of the revelations of this year's Tour.
Yeah, absolutely. He's being overshadowed by the revelation, of course, Lance Armstrong. Otherwise, we might be talking a lot more about Kurt van der Wouwe. But Armstrong now still ahead of the riders who are desperately beginning to regroup here and form a pact around them. And Armstrong is back as well. So we're getting a group here of Dufaux, Armstrong, Casero, Virenque, and about to get on the back again, Alex Zülle.
One of the spectators sticking something onto the backs of the riders there, and Armstrong won't be too happy about that. And if he gets a little bit closer, he might get a bop on the noggin there. But Armstrong getting himself composed again, getting himself back into the bike race, leaving all of the pace setting here up to Laurent Dufaux. But he will be surprised, I think, to see the recovery of these other riders, because I reckon when he took off at the bottom of this climb that he felt he was going to ride away from everybody again, as he did in Sestriere. And they've all managed to recover and pull themselves back up to the yellow jersey.
Well, again, Paul, I'm wondering if, in fact, he eased up rather than found the pace too much, because this rider seems to be in absolute control here. He looks at his rivals. He doesn't just follow the wheels. He answers everything they throw at him. He is riding like a real champion and a real leader of this Tour de France. And all of these riders, they've attacked him so much in the mountains that they have no answer to him at the moment. And now Virenque is making one of his rare attacks here. He goes, and look at the speed of Armstrong. Hardly a change of look on his face and a simple acceleration.
Incredible response to that attack. Richard Virenque trying to get himself away, pull himself up to Fernando Escartin, but nobody is eating into the time advantage that Fernando Escartin has today. But Armstrong now doesn't want to let anybody else get clear. That's why he responded immediately to that acceleration by Virenque. But you notice as well the white jersey of Alex Zuller. He's recovered perfectly, and he too has pulled himself back up there, but it's put Laurent Dufaux into difficulty.
Well, further up the mountain, and it can't be far away from the kilometre to go banner here. This is Fernando Escartin. And a lot of these people, remember, are Spanish now. They've been listening on the radio for hours, and now he's doing what he promised to do, and that was to attack the race leader in the Pyrenees. But I'm not so sure he's got the sort of time gains. 2:28 when he's so far behind is not a lot.
He really needed to pull back 4 or 5 minutes on a stage like this to even hope about getting himself closer to Lance Armstrong in the overall rankings. And another thing he's going to have to worry about is, in fact, trying to get time over Alex Zuller, because if he doesn't put too much time between himself and Alex Zuller, he could be losing his second place in the overall standings, because the Swiss rider has made an incredible comeback. After losing over 6 minutes on day 3 of the Tour, he's really climbed up the rankings.
Well, this was the day when everybody saw the Tour de France route announced. This was the day they all said would be the decisive stage of the race. It could be the turning point of the race, or in the case of Lance Armstrong, it could simply be consolidating him as the true leader of this Tour. He is not losing enough time to Fernando Escartin. Escartin will just go up towards the finishing now. This is the little stretch of road that they built at a cost of $100,000 just to finish the Tour de France on it.
And Fernando Escartin will be happy now, because this part of the road, in fact, levels off and drops down just ever so slightly to the finish line. Time to pull up his zip, and this is a victory that he is going to savour, because he's tried for so many years in the Tour de France to get himself a stage victory, and he's never managed to do so. And to win today so close to Spain will be absolutely magic.
Well, Escartin has never won a stage before. He's not going to be prevented from that now. Inside 200 metres to go. A mountaintop finish, in this case downhill, as he races towards the end of the 15th stage, the Queen stage of the Tour de France. And a real true climber is taking the flag at the end of it. That's for certain. He made his attack a long way out, and I hope he will gain time. We'll know in a minute exactly what he has gained here. But Fernando Escartin has won the big stage of the Tour de France on the first ever finish at Pau-Engoulé, and for the first time, Paul, Lance Armstrong looked there just to be struggling for a moment.
Just going round the corner there, he lost a bit of time on the other two riders who he was with, Richard Virenque and Alex Zuller. I'm not sure if he is in serious difficulty, but he doesn't seem to be able to accelerate to stay with him. But he's not going to lose too much time here. He's only going to lose 10 or 15 seconds, but this is the first sign we've seen of any weakness in Armstrong.
And Richard Virenque now, can he finish second here? Remember, the French have still not won the stage, and it's not going to happen today either. Alex Zuller, well, he's been a remarkable example to young cyclists of how to suffer on the stage of a Tour de France or just any bike race and never lose sight of what you want to achieve. He has come back so many times, and here he is now fighting out a second-place finish on this very hard day. He keeps looking over his shoulder for Lance Armstrong, and for the first time for an awful long time in this Tour, if at all, he's going to take a few seconds away from the race leader, and he's still found the strength to sprint away. He gets second place. Virenque will take third, and then the clock will continue to count as the Maillot Jaune still safely on the shoulders of Lance Armstrong, who finishes here in fourth.
Well, that was a big surprise for Lance Armstrong, but he didn't panic too much. He kept going to the line, but the day certainly in the Pyrenees, Phil, has to belong to Fernando Escartin, the incredible climber from Spain, and what a magic performance by him. But the damage has been done to a lot of the other big names in the Tour de France, Nardello and Dufault coming over the line, but there was a lot of excitement at the back of the pack because Abraham Olano, in fact, we're being told, was involved in an accident earlier on.
And that was over the top of the Valerons where he changed his bike, and he's coming in this small group over 7 minutes back. But this man didn't care. He'd won the stage. He's the top Spaniard right now in the Tour de France, having beaten Alex Zülle, Richard Brink, Lance Armstrong, and all of the other big names, and the many minutes across the board today. In fact, 38 minutes covering all of the finishes on the stage. Lance Armstrong, though, he keeps his yellow jersey. He's 6 minutes 19 seconds now ahead of Escartin, and there's confirmation of that. Alex Zülle, remember, lost 6 minutes on day 2 of the Tour de France. He's only 7.5 behind, more or less. So he's still very much in the frame, and now he's in with a real chance of a podium place in Paris as well. So that's what happens when you suffer. You get results.
You responded to a lot of the early attacks, but eventually when Escartin left, you didn't try to follow him. Why?
I didn't think he'd get that much time, and we thought it was better to just have the guys ride and keep him at a reasonable distance, but he was going fantastic today. I mean, he rode like an animal, and he deserved to win.
And a little sign of weakness at the end when you just got dropped off the back from Virenque and Zülle?
Yeah, I paid for my aggression at the bottom of the climb, and I don't know, the others didn't look so good, and Brunel, he told me to attack and just ride my own race, so, but I paid in the end.
Yes, Lance, but nothing too serious, just a few seconds. Richard Virenque consolidating his lead in the King of the Mountains and looking now for a 5th title in the last 6 years. And a good competition in the green jersey, 10 points separating Zabel and O'Grady. That sets a run and run. But on the descent of Valerons, where Olano had his problems, so too did the Banesto rider, Manuel Beltran. He hit a race referee and, in fact, continued through to the finish here, but retired on the start of this stage, stage 16, 192 kilometres, now taking the riders from Lannemezan down to Pau, crossing some of the most famous mountains in the Tour de France, which were introduced in 1910.
As always, Phil, it's the US Postal Riders on the front. A great day of conditions. Not too much wind, a west-northwesterly at 9 kilometres an hour. 26 centigrade in the valleys, but over the top of the mountain passes, it drops down to about 14 degrees Celsius. And there is a big possibility today of very low cloud.
The first sprint came at Saroncolin, 16.5 kilometres, and the leader didn't matter too much, Sébastien Demarbet of Lotto, but the sprint for second place was very important between Eric Zabel and Stuart O'Grady, the two who seem to have made this competition for the green jersey their very own. And it was the green jersey holder, Zabel, who nipped in just ahead of Stuart O'Grady. Then towards the top of the Col d'Aspin, it wasn't a difficult climb, all the field contesting it here with sprinter Robbie McEwen going for it. Then a strange thing happened. He decided to sit up and allow the climbers going for the prizes, and it was Piccoli ahead of Virenque and Arietta as they crossed the line.
Very weird thing there, Richard. Robbie McEwen obviously not wanting to falsify the sprint at the top there, because Piccoli's still going to fight all the way to the finish. But on the Col de Tourmalet, Phil, the clouds certainly came down, and that had a major effect on the race, and that's where the big hammer came down.
And this was the start of all the day's action now, because here on the climb, a 17.5 kilometre climb, more than 10 miles into the sky of the granddaddy of them all, the Col de Tourmalet, over 2,000 metres. The breakaway forming here, and Tonkov is heading the charge here. Alberto Eli is the telecom rider. Echeverria, the little Spaniard who's had one win at Saint Flour, is in second place. And this is an interesting move. Armstrong and Escartin shadowing each other, but they're not in the breakaway.
It's amazing to see Pavel Tonkov, this man we were expecting to see high in the overall rankings, but he's had a very up and down Tour de France. He had an accident when we went into the Pyrenees. He was involved in a small crash on the road to Sestriere, but he never has really shown that he's going to be a big challenger for the final top 3 in this year's Tour. But he at the moment is lying 11th overall, and a ride today like this could move him very nicely into the top 10, but certainly not close to 3rd overall.
Well, Tonkov letting his impressions known of the young spectator there. You really can't do that to cyclists who are giving their all on a mountain like this. It is certainly no joke to these guys who are flat out at the moment. And just look at Kevin Livingstone here again, like Tyler Hamilton, doing his very, very best to help Armstrong. And at the back of the race, a little bit of trouble here.
Stefano Garzelli, the teammate of Marco Pantani, going out at the back of the group. Livingston riding a stormer here on the slopes of the Col de Tourmalet, setting the pace ahead of Belly, moving up into third place. That's Alex Zuller in this group. Fernando Escartin, he must obviously be thinking about this as the last possibility to try and consolidate his place in the overall rankings. He's currently lying second, and I reckon he'd like a couple more minutes advantage over Alex Zuller before we go up to the final time trial. On the back, Laurent Duflo himself riding a very good, so consistent Tour de France this year.
Well, I think once Armstrong gets down to the finish in Po today, providing he's lost no time, he'll feel he can win this Tour for sure now. The time trial will put the advantage back to him, evidenced by the fact he's won both time trials so far in this year's Tour. The Col de Tourmalet bathed in sunshine for the moment, but there's a lot of cloud lying around the surface, and Armstrong's group is not really losing time, Paul, just 25 seconds, and thanks to this rider here.
Unbelievable. They've been swapping around Tyler Hamilton and Kevin Livingstone every other day on the big mountain stages. Today is the turn of Kevin Livingstone, and this man rode a fantastic Tour de France last year for Bobby Julich when he was on the Cofidis squad, but he wanted to come back here to US Postal to ride alongside Lance Armstrong. He also lives in Austin, Texas, and is a very good friend of Armstrong, and today that's all he's thinking about. Not thinking about himself, not thinking about his own personal place at the end of this Tour de France, but the win for the team. And that's how a domestique has to think.
And we've probably as well he left Cofidis, I think, because it's been a tough tour for them with their lost Bobby Julich in the time trial at Metz, and Christophe Raniero, the winner of the King of the Mountains last year, has been a comparative failure this time around. These are the leaders still setting the pace. Tonkov looking good, and David Echeverria, I said earlier, he's a man for stage races, and again he's proving it now.
Well, it's a real rock around the clock for David Echeverria, because one day he's winning a stage on the flat and the next day he's right at the front in the mountains. He, in the moment, really is thinking more about Abraham Alano. He's hoping that Abraham Alano can recover, but he's not even in the group with Lance Armstrong at the moment, because Alano, once again, Phil, on this stage, is losing time on the mountain passes.
And once again, Paul, we have a huge bunch of talented climbers all staying together. This is a most unusual Tour de France for this very reason. And in fact, Armstrong now using as little energy as possible behind Livingstone. He knows that people like Escartin cannot wait much longer.
He's going to wait for those attacks to come, and he'll be trying to keep as much of his reserve as possible, because he feels that Escartin and Alex Zuller will certainly attack him. A lot of Spanish spectators have come out to see the race here as Alberto Eli leads them up towards the summit of the climb, and there, in fact, is the yellow jersey group of Lance Armstrong, and the man caught in the middle is Andrea Perron, who, in fact, is having a fantastic ride here at the Tour de France this year.
He's having the best tour we've ever seen, but he was with the leaders. He's slowly being tailed back here as Alberto Eli pushes on towards the summit now. And a lovely crowd up here. There have been moments when the crowds have not been as big this year on the Tour de France, but in the mountains here they are certainly as big. And Alberto Eli over the top, followed by Echeverria and Tonkov as they come up towards the summit of the Col de Tourmalet.
Kevin Livingstone still leading out Lance Armstrong. They're not too far from the summit of the Tourmalet either. You can see all the haze in the valley below. There is Andrea Perron. He just manages to survive in front of the group, and Escartin now moving forward. Just a little dummy attack to try and come up alongside Armstrong.
Well, Armstrong should feel pretty proud now, because he's over the top of the biggest climb remaining in the Tour de France. He brings out his little plastic top there to keep his chest warm on the long descent. It is a long descent off the Tourmalet as well, and you've got to be careful because they're going to descend into the mist.
It's going to be very difficult. We're getting reports already that the visibility on the descent is very bad indeed. That's why Pavel Tonkov is backing off David Echeverria here. Tonkov doesn't seem to go down these descents very well at all, but David Echeverria in front is really taking several risks, trying to pull himself back up to Alberto Eli. And Echeverria just does not know the position of his team leader, number 51 there, Abraham Alano. Once again on the slopes of these big mountains, he's losing almost 3 minutes.
And more big time being lost by Abraham Alano as he comes over the top. You're absolutely right, Paul. It's just on 3 minutes as he goes over. Now, this is the mist we were talking about as they start the descent. And the peculiarity of the descent of the Tourmalet, as you can see here, the roads are unguarded. So you really must be very careful.
Pavel Tonkov, Alberto Eli and David Echavarria now on the slopes of the Col de Soulor. There are only two big climbs left in the Tour de France, only two big climbs where Lance Armstrong could be put into serious difficulty. The Col de Soulor and then almost immediately after it the Col de l'Aubisque. But again, because of a general regrouping on the descent of the Tourmalet, Armstrong has got all his teammates, and what a great ride by the man in second place there in the line, Frankie Andreu. The man on the front was Christian van der Velde.
They have responded so well, and Van der Velde in his first tour has been simply fantastic. Smiled his way around the route.
Well, there's an attack here from Escartini. Waited for the slopes of the Soulor, and he's gone out there to try and attack Armstrong. Armstrong has responded immediately, and look who's there once again, the white jersey, Alex Zuller.
Well, you see, he's had to go here because the Soulor takes us onto the Aubisque, and that's the end of the mountains. And the reason Pantani isn't here is because he didn't like the long journey from the Aubisque down to the finishing line in Pau. So, again, this man has got to attack, but he's got all sorts of trouble with him in the first turn. And, well, the top three riders in the Tour are right here, Armstrong, Escartini and Zuller.
Well, Belly recovered there, 141, but also Richard Virenque has recovered as well. He's managed to pull himself back into this leading group. 5 riders at the front of the race. And in fact, Virenque didn't quite make the junction there. He's gone back a little bit. I was quite confident that he was going to come across. He was coming across with Belly. And this is the attack, Phil. This is how Escartine went straight off the front of the pack. Armstrong was surrounded by all of his teammates, but as soon as he saw the Spanish climber go, he was straight onto his wheel.
Unbelievable. He's so alert. He's watching for every move, and he didn't give him chance to even think he was going to open up a gap. And once you react like that, it tells the riders who are attacking, why bother, because this guy is watching everything.
Well, Stefan Goubert was a Polti rider on the front there, trying to place Richard Virenque back into this bike race. Right on Virenque's wheel was Kevin Livingston. These are the 3 leaders, though. This is Pavel Tonkov on the front, followed by Alberto Eli. And this is the very select group behind. In fact, Christophe Raniero, who's trying to get himself into the bike race this year, is having a pretty seriously hard time.
He certainly is, and we're looking at around about 4 riders. They're not going to worry anybody too much, least of all Lance Armstrong, but the others will want to keep them under control, I would think.
Virenque now setting the pace himself, trying to pull himself back up to Armstrong. He realises there's not many climbs left in the Tour de France, and he is trying to keep his place as the best Frenchman in this year's Tour de France. It's 40 seconds the difference between Lance Armstrong and Richard Virenque at the moment. The man in second place there is Kevin Livingston, and he won't be helping the Frenchman at all.
Up towards the top of the Soulor, the clouds are closing in. The descent, we understand, is completely covered in mist, so we might lose pictures for a little while. But as we head up towards the summit now, Tonkov, he really hasn't given up, despite the fact he lost his Tour de France very early on, and then he had that crash into Sestriere. But right now he's looking to go over the top of the Col Soulor in the lead. It looks like he will, with Eli and Echevarria, and Roland Meyer still out on his own summit. And that's the order over the summit. Tonkov and Eli first and second. Echevarria right behind him, getting 22 points for third. Now back down, Paul, to the chase group.
Escartine is pulling himself right up this mountain. They've had a pretty serious attack here, Phil, on the Col de Soulor. He obviously wanted to go out and try and open himself up very early on. Here is Vinokurov, the man that many thought would be a big star in this year's Tour de France, but his first attempt really has been a sortie of reconnaissance to find out what it's all about. And I reckon next year he'll come back to this event and it'll be much more competitive.
A huge learning curve for the young man from Kazakhstan, but he will come back and do a good tour. He's ridden some good smaller tours. Indeed, this year he's ridden some brilliant tours, including the Dauphiné Libéré. Over the top of the climb then for the rest of the group here. And it looks to me as though now it's going to be a desperate chase down to the valley below before they start the final climb of the day, the Col d'Aubisque. And then those together at the top of the Col d'Aubisque should be together at the finishing line. Here comes Virenque. There's still a few points left for the mountains for him.
And what's more important for him is to try and pull himself up to that group of Lance Armstrong, because he doesn't want those other riders in the group to get too much advantage over him. He wants to try and keep himself in the bike race. He's looking to try and collect as close to the podium as possible. 4 minutes 15 seconds his deficit on the leaders on the road. That's the 3 men at the front of the race, Eli, Tonkov and Echevarria. And these are the conditions on the descent. And I tell you, Phil, I've descended this climb like this, and it really is pretty scary in some of the corners.
I don't know why it is, but these climbs down here are always in the mist, especially the Col d'Aubisque, as we saw Contreras there setting the pace. And these riders are the 3 leaders, and they are now climbing back up to the sky for the last time in this year's Tour de France. Eli, Tonkov and Echevarria.
Chasing group is not too far behind them. The last time check we had was just around about 1 minute. So the group of Lance Armstrong really is starting to eat into the lead that these three riders have here. And a lot of work is being done by Alberto Eli. And even further down the main field is losing serious time. The group of Richard Virenque now. Behind the group of Virenque, in fact, is the group of Abraham Olano. Olano is trying to pull himself back into the bike race. And there in second position, Andrea Perron. Riding a good day in the mountains, Salvatore Comesso.
He certainly is. This young man is also a big surprise. There are so many new names coming through, and I would like to think for the right reasons in this year's Tour de France, because it does seem that the dope controls and the blood tests that the riders have had to take, I think the message at last is getting home, and we're looking at a very hard-ridden, clean Tour this year, and I certainly hope so. And Lance Armstrong, if he is to win this Tour de France, will be an outstanding winner of it. He's surrounded by the Spanish riders who have never given up attacking him at all in this year's Tour. Well, at the back of this group now, it looks as though Francois Simon is getting himself into a spot of bother as well, along with Christophe Rinero.
Well, Francois Simon was in a breakaway before Escartine came up to him. He was hoping to survive over these two climbs and the possibility of following in the wheel marks of his brother, in fact, who won this stage into Po back in 1985. But he's not going to do it because of the speed of Fernando Escartine at the front of this group. And what they're trying to do now is make sure they can put time between themselves, Abraham Olano, Laurent Dufaux, and all the other major contenders who've actually missed out on this very vicious attack made by the Spaniard.
And there's no doubt that Lance Armstrong learned his lesson yesterday. He's not going to allow Escartine an inch. He's going to follow him everywhere. He really only has to look out for two riders, and the other one's riding behind him, Alex Zuller. If he keeps an eye on those two, it should be a cruise all the way to Paris.
Armstrong is very alert. He was waiting for that attack to come from Escartine, and as soon as it came, he was right onto the wheel.
And still riders dropping off the back there as they tried just desperately to hold the group in front, just close enough to get themselves over the top of the Obisque. They know once they're at the top of this mountain, it's not an easy climb either. And then the climbers' race is over this year, and it's just a long descent down to the bottom and a fast run into Po. Escartine, this has to be his swan song, and he's going absolutely nowhere.
He's trying to eliminate as many riders as possible from this group. The man just holding on at the back is his own teammate. That's Contreras, the Colombian rider. Therein is Alex Zuller, very comfortable as well in third place. And the Vitaligo Seguros rider in the back there is also Garcia. But you can see from the front of the race, Armstrong is still 2 minutes and 17 seconds behind those three leaders. So they're in fact doing a great job. They're opening up a pretty serious advantage.
Now, they've got to survive, though, over the top of the climb, so I think 2 minutes won't be enough, but we'll find out. Nobody helping Escartine. He's keeping the rhythm going. In fact, he's hurting no one right now. Armstrong just sitting here, enjoying the ride through the mist to the top of the Col d'Aubisque, the last big mountain of the Tour, and he knows then advantage will swing back to him. And Garcia sitting at the back there. He's been riding well in the mountains these last couple of days. Belly is also here. And Carlos Contreras keeping his rhythm going, and it looks to me as though this little group now are going to finish the top of the climb together. Back up to the leaders, inside the last kilometre for them.
Alberto Eli rode last year for the Casino squad. He too was brought into this team this year to look after Jan Ullrich in the big mountains. He's turned out some pretty good performances, and he's been fairly aggressive, looking to try and get himself a stage victory. If he goes over the top of this climb, I reckon what's going to happen is there'll be a general regrouping on the road down into Po, because that group of Lance Armstrongs looks pretty much compact and very concerned that they're all going to work together and try and get this race together before we go down into Po. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Abraham Olano recovering and the whole race coming back together in a group of maybe 60 heading into the streets of Po.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me either, but you never know, because remember what happened on the Passage du Bois. Once there was a split in the field, the yellow jersey, Lance Armstrong and everybody else drove it all the way to the finish, and poor Alex Zuller, amongst others, lost 6 minutes. We've never seen or heard of Michael Bogart since that day, and he came to the Tour de France as a pre-race favourite, but I think he was destroyed mentally as well as physically.
Absolutely. He wanted to try and get himself up to try and win the Alpe d'Huez, because that is the home of the Dutch riders. They always love to excel when they go there, but he never managed to get himself into the bike race, and he's ridden around this Tour de France in absolute anonymity. But there's an awful long way to go from the top of the Col de l'Aubisque down to the finish line in Po. In fact, 60 kilometres of racing, that's an hour and a half. So a lot of things could happen on the road down here.
So Ellie advantage as he comes up towards the summit, and I don't know whether there'll be a sprint or not. Probably not, because these riders are thinking now of the finishing line as Ellie leads Tonkov and Echebarria up the climb. Little David Echebarria, another one of the young revelations of this year's Tour de France. I met him on the first month he was a professional in Australia, in fact, when he was out there to ride his first race as a professional. And we thought him as a sprinter, but now see him as a climber. Ellie, Tonkov, Echebarria over the top of the last big mountain of this year's Tour.
Now this is the group of Lance Armstrong, the yellow jersey. Still the pace on the front of that group is being set by Fernando Escartin. Escartin is trying to do as much damage as possible. In fact, they've closed in an awful lot on the three leaders. The last time check, 1 minute and 26 seconds. And if Lance Armstrong puts in a pretty rapid descent, Phil, he could in fact find himself catching up the three leaders before the bottom.
So, well, we couldn't follow them on the descent because of the bad weather conditions. We're picking them up now on the Valley Road, and they're all coming back together again. This is a very select group now, Paul.
In fact, they have picked up the three leaders. This is the group at the front of the race, 12 riders, and those three leaders, Ellie, Tonkov and Echebarria, are in this group now. The group of Richard Virenque, the last time check we had, was more than 2 minutes and 47 seconds behind, so it is going to be a chase. It is going to be a man-against-man race all the way up to the finish line in Pau. Armstrong very happy to work here. Surprising to see him working in this group now because there are 2 Kelme riders and 2 Banesto riders. Armstrong doesn't have any teammates, and he doesn't really have any reason to ride.
Well, Olano has got up into that Virenque group, as so have most of the riders who've missed the slip on the descent. But you see, with somebody like Escartin here now, Armstrong as well, they're driving clear of the rest of the race. And this sort of a breakaway, although it's not going to result in a victory for Escartin, it could almost certainly confirm his place on the podium in Paris.
That's why the Spanish riders are putting the pressure on at the front. These riders here in this group are trying to survive. They're trying to support the lesser leaders of the Tour de France, because now Abraham Olano is a lesser leader. He's not really going to get up to the podium position. He's not even going to finish the best Spanish rider in this year's Tour de France.
There's Alex Zülle. He will be thinking of the team lead in the Banesto racing strip, I would think, now, and he's going to drive this race on. This is Carlos Contreras, the teammate of Escartin. He struggled a little bit at times, but he's looking good again now, and he's prepared to give everything on this flat road and make as much time as he can for these 12 riders, and in particular for Escartin.
This is a great move today as well by the 2 Spanish teams, Kelme and Banesto. Banesto will be extending their lead at the top of the competition for the best team in this year's race. They look as if they're going to move Alex Zülle very close to the podium with this action this afternoon, but they will also have a pretty serious advantage when it goes to that team competition as well. And we'd have to go back through the books a long time to see when the last time a Spanish team won the best team at the Tour.
Absolutely, and Banesto have had a pretty dismal year so far this year, and they've had a pretty good Tour de France though, despite the fall to Alex Zülle. And here they are now, Zülle, and still Armstrong helping drive the race on a little bit here, with Belli just behind him, who's ridden so well for Festina, and Contreras still working with the group here.
It's amazing. There are a lot of riders in that group behind, a lot of big, strong riders from the Spanish Once team. There's a lot of riders from Lotto trying to chase, and, of course, 1 or 2 from Polti. But they've done nothing at all to eat into the advantage of this leading group. They had 2 minutes 47 seconds a while ago, and it's only come down to 2 minutes 30. And Contreras, not happy with the fact that this group is stopping working, he's decided to try and go it alone.
Well, we're in the streets of Pau here, but Contreras has literally ridden off the front here without launching an attack. He's realised now he's got the gap, and now he's started to move clear. Now, this is an interesting move because I don't think Armstrong will chase him down. Escartin has no reason to chase him down, and neither has Zülle, really, except they're on a rival Spanish team. And so this guy may have made the move of the race, and he didn't even attack.
Those 3 guys will watch each other. Armstrong, Zülle and Escartin. They will match each other out. In fact, that's exactly what's happened. This is Vinokurov, who's tried to go clear for the Casino squad. Alberto Elli, I don't know where he's got all his strength from today, but he too has seen the possibility of getting a stage victory at the Tour. And David Echebarria has moved across there as well from Once.
Well, Ellie, first over the Tourmalet, first over the Obese, second over the Soulor. He certainly has had a good day, inside 4 kilometres, up a nasty little climb just there as they bring themselves into the city of Pau now. And it looks like this breakaway is split for good. Contreras has created the split too.
Two riders in this group from Once. Marcos Serrano is the other rider from Once who's managed to get onto this group. And there's a Benesto rider also trying to get himself onto the back there. But this is the leading group of three. Again, it's splitting up. Alberto Eli taking up third place. He'll have pretty sore legs because he's been in the break nearly the whole of this afternoon stage. Contreras got caught out by the acceleration there.
Well, after Guerini winning at Alpe d'Huez, it's not quite the Alpe d'Huez finish in Po, but we are still in the Pyrenees, and it's possible now for Eli, as this little group of 6 is now working together and heading up towards the finish.
The Benesto rider on the back is Jose Luis Arrieta. He's just managed to make contact, but if I was the team manager of Once, I would start to attack one at a time. They've got a great chance having 2 riders in the group, one against everyone else. Once you've attacked, you launch a counter-attack immediately afterwards if you get caught.
Well, I'm not sure whether they've heard you or not, Paul, but they've certainly started to move around a bit at the front, but the attackers come from the back. It looks like Contreras has gone. On the far right, no, it's not Contreras. In fact, that is Arrieta who's gone for Benesto. And so he came up and he's jumped away in the finishing straight here. Not quite, but it will be shortly. Well marked then by Vinokourov, and Eli has come on as well. So with 1 kilometre to go, this is going to go down to the sprint.
Watch out for a late attack, though, from Marcos Serrano, because they will now expect the sprint to go to David Echevarria, but they don't want to leave it because after such a long stage like this, it is a very risky situation to be in. That's Echevarria getting his hand in the air. He wants his teammate to come forward to help him out. There's the attack. Serrano's going down the right-hand side.
And he's been marked by Alexander Vinokourov, and they're all back together again. Now it's up to little David Echevarria if he can do anything about this. He's taken third wheel. Primarily he is a sprinter, although he's shown us in this tour he's also a very good climber indeed. And it looks as though Serrano is now going to lead him out all the way to the line. But Eli, and I don't know where he's got his strength from today, is in the best position to win this stage now as he sits on the wheel of Serrano. And watch the man on the left now, because that's David Echevarria. He will not believe it if he wins a second stage of the Tour de France. He's moved right onto his teammate's wheel. He tried to, but now he's been pushed off it, and he grits his teeth and goes for it. So David Echevarria being challenged by Contreras on the left. Contreras, though, hasn't got the speed of this little man. David Echevarria continues his wonderful Tour de France. Second stage win for him to match the one at Saint-Flour, and there's the little dance for you as well. Now, going back down the road, the rest of the breakaway is coming in.
Well, coming up to the line is Garcia for Vitaligo, but the big 3 riders in this Tour de France, Alex Zülle, Lance Armstrong and Escartine, have marked themselves out of the possibility of a stage victory. But coming up to the line, they're going to be led over by Belly, who just gets it there. And Belly putting in a great sprint just ahead of the Mapei rider, who was Pavel Tonkov.
But look at this, the young man with his tongue out, and he snatches the stage victory. He celebrates his birthday during the Tour de France as well, as he now gets 2 wins, beats Contreras, Eli and Vinokourov. Arrieta, Serrano, Belli led in the rest for 7th, including this man here, who keeps his overall lead in the Tour de France. Now he can really believe that he can win this race, because the time trial will be to his favour. 6 minutes 15 the gap over Escartine, so he comes away from the Pyrenees having lost just a little bit of time. Richard Virenque, though, is the winner of the King of the Mountains, and there's still a couple of days of racing to go, and this man continues to build a lead ever so slowly in the green jersey competition. Well done, Eric Zabel. But I think all of the riders smiling now as they leave the Pyrenees behind them. No more mountains to climb in this year's Tour de France, as the race now heads up the west coast of France, bound for Bordeaux. 141 riders still in, and the distance 200 kilometres. Hello again and welcome to the Tour de France. Well, yesterday was the last day in the mountains of this event, and it certainly was Lance Armstrong's longest day. He spent 5 hours on the bike, and then for 2 hours after that he tried to convince the media of this race that he really is riding it without chemical assistance. The team also asked the UCI, the world body, the International Cycling Union, if they would also release the confidential information on the drug tests he's given so far. Here's an extract from that statement. The UCI confirmed that the controls performed up to the 19th of July during the Tour de France have all produced negative results. The rider used the ointment Semolite, which contains triamcinolone to treat a skin allergy. In view of all these elements, the UCI affirms in the strongest terms that such use is permitted by the rules and therefore does not constitute any form of doping. This whole situation has come about because of an article appearing in the French daily newspaper Le Monde, and this was Lance Armstrong's answer on French television last night.
We're not talking about doping. we're talking about a simple skin cream. And I wanted to talk to the press. I always want to talk to, when there's a problem, I want to speak with the press. Today, there was clearly a problem. I wanted to speak to the press conference, come here on Velo Club, explain the situation. Le Monde is looking for a doping story, but there's not one. There's a story of skin cream.
And Le Monde, by the way, being the newspaper and not the American cyclist who's won the Tour de France 3 times and is here now witnessing this incredible performance by Lance Armstrong. The rollout then of the 17th stage now, 200 kilometres from Rennes to Bordeaux. And the riders facing up to what should be, Paul, by tradition, a long hot day in the saddle on very straight roads.
Unbelievable, the roads in this part of France, long and straight through the area called Les Landes.
Into Bordeaux, and as we expected, the whole field coming in together. Now, can Eric Zabel at last to get that stage win, which would equal the German record along with Rudi Altig? He set it. He's won 8 stages. Zabel hasn't won a stage for a couple of years. He's got his teammates to lead him out. He looks good.
He looks good. Alberto Eli swings off, leads it up now to Kai Hundermark. Right behind him, Stefan Westermann. He's the pilot fish for Eric Zabel. Zabel's right up there, but on his wheel is Tom Steels.
Well, Steele's obviously the danger man sitting in the slipstream there of Zabel. Stuart O'Grady is not to be seen here at the moment now. The last lead-out man, as always, is young Stefan Weissermann here. His first Tour de France. He's not that young, by the way, but he's now very, very strong. Steele's, though, is dangerous just on the wheel of Zabel now. A little bit of hesitation, but Zabel is going now. George Hincapie's trying to get in. So, too, is Robbie McEwen. McEwen goes right, but Steele's comes through the middle and makes it look easy. Tom Steele has refound his sprinting legs straight out of the Pyrenees. The face there, Paul, of Zabel.
Zabel just looked across. He knew he was beaten. As soon as he saw the white jersey of Tom Steels coming by, he knew he had nothing left to respond. Steels is certainly the fastest sprinter in the Tour over the last 50 metres.
So Steels has a personal tally of 1-3 and disqualified in 1 now after winning 4 stages last year. Look at this, though. He makes it look so easy. He is so much quicker than anybody else in this Tour once he reads the sprint just right. And here is poor Stuart O'Grady. In fact, he had a crash just in the last kilometre, a little bit of a contretemps with other riders, including Robin McEwen, and he was dumped on the ground, and as a result, he's lost all hope now of that green jersey because he got no points today. Zabel in 3rd place, George Hincapie taking 4th, and the other sprinter Martinelli just behind. So the sprinters' stage is over at Bordeaux. The riders now looking to the 18th stage here as they go up to nearby Jonzac to the ride to Futuroscope, which is the scene of the next time trial and the last time trial of the Tour. Riders rolling away, and it's a flat road all of the way here of 184.5 kilometres.
And again, it should be a day for the sprinters because they need to keep themselves together. But what happened again, Phil, was the big break got clear, and running into the finish, 13 men were at the head of the race.
And out front they've been for the most part of the day. They got away at 25 kilometres, and now it's all down to which one of them can win the sprint here. Nobody again, Paul, is endangering the race leader overall, but this man in the last kilometre, Gianpaolo Mondini, has got away.
He surprised them all again. The thing is, there were 5 French riders in that group and 4 Italians. But the strange thing is, once an Italian gets clear, they do not chase him down. They leave it up to the other nationalities. And again, the French still chasing a stage victory, and they can't pull back Jean-Paul Mondini, who so far this year has got 1 win to his credit, a stage in the Tour of Japan.
And don't forget, he wasn't coming here until about 48 hours before the race began because the team wasn't one of the original selections. They were first reserve. Now he's going to go home with a stage win in the Tour de France because I don't think they're going to come back to him now. He's sprinting home to the area where the big showdown will come tomorrow in the time trial. Gianpaolo Mondini of the Cantina Tollo team is coming home and looking very, very good indeed. It's been an opportunist breakaway and they should never have let it happen.
They should never let it happen. The teams of the sprinters should have controlled it. They tried to over the first 30 or 40 kilometres, keeping the pace high. But this man timed it to perfection. He's cheated all of the French riders again. 5 Frenchmen in that group. Jean-Cyril Robin, the white jersey, trying to come up to the line. But once again, it's going to go over the border. This time to Italy, Jean-Paul Mondini.
And Robin, in disgust, waves his right arm because again the French have failed to win a stage, and he's got second, and I've lost count of the second places they have had. But you know, they are set to have the worst tour since 1926, and they're running out of chances. There's only 2 stages left to win. But this rider won't care because he has got his stage victory in the Tour de France, the biggest stage victory of any race he's ever had. And there are 120 riders in this sprint here now, which is for 14th place. And it looks as though Robbie McEwen is going to get the better this time of Zabel. And O'Grady was just in there off to the right as well. So he loses even more points now to Eric Zabel. There's the result of the stage. Mondini ahead of Robin Vinokourov. Piccoli again there snatching 4th place. Overall, Lance Armstrong keeps his lead. And the names behind him are just the same as they were at the start of the day. Well, we're looking down on the theme park now of Futuroscope. In fact, this will be the scene of the big depart of the Tour de France next year. This is where it all starts from. But right now, Lance Armstrong is looking where he's going to finish the 86th edition right here. He's won both time trials so far, Paul, and he's looking now to join some big names if he can make this 3.
A very difficult time trial, 57 kilometres. All the big names been out and looked at the course this morning, and Armstrong, last man to start.
Last man to start. He won the prologue at Le Puy de Fou. Then he regained the yellow jersey at the time trial at Metz. For nearly 2 weeks, he has successfully defended that with a great team around him. Now, can he even increase his lead, or can he at least win the race?
The most important thing for Armstrong is to get round and not lose too much time to keep himself at the top of the leaderboard. The big battle really is for 2nd and 3rd place. The battle has been between Fernando Escartin, who's currently in 2nd, and Alex Zuller, the Swiss rider, who is currently in 3rd. And it's that fight that is really going to decide who gets onto the highest step of the podium alongside Lance Armstrong.
Well, these riders were split by 3 minutes at the start house today, but look at this now. Armstrong is absolutely flying here because that man in front is Fernando Escartin, and at 20 kilometres to go, he's going to have him.
He's pulled back 1 minute every 10 kilometres on Escartin, but I tell you, one man doing some fast times out on the course is Alex Zuller. Zuller has really ridden well over this course, but the best times so far are being set by Rick Verbrugge, but this, Phil, I have to say, is unbelievable. Armstrong has caught his 3-minute man and gone straight by.
Now, Escartin, he'll do well to try and hold on to the skirt tails of Armstrong here because this is the rider setting the time checks ahead of them. Alex Zuller, the other two still to arrive there, knocking off Rick Verbrugge off the top of the timer boards. But these two now are locked in battle, and it might help Escartin.
Well, if Escartin can just keep Lance Armstrong in his sights, Hamilton has the best time at the finish line. Tyler Hamilton, 1:09.52, and he's going to beat the time trial champion of the world, Abraham Olano, who is not going to win this stage.
Well, with only 1 day to go, the boys said to Tyler Hamilton, go out and really show them how to ride, and he's done that now because Olano has come in, and only a 1:10.35 for 3rd best for him, so that's a big surprise. Armstrong, though, is still setting the best times.
This is at the 42-kilometre time check. Hamilton went through there in 52 minutes 23 seconds, and Armstrong is pretty close to that.
Armstrong is a lot better than that right now, and Casero, he's had a great ride today, this man. He's fought for a high finish, and he's aiming at Richard Virenque's top place in the GC, and with a time like that, he might get it. 2nd best time. He's even beaten Olano. That's incredible.
Still, it's unbelievable. Tyler Hamilton is at the top of the leaderboard, and all the big names have nearly come in. The next man coming very close to it is going to be Alex Zuller. Zuller is trying to get the victory. Look at the time to beat, 1:09.52. Zuller looks as if he may well go inside that.
Well, Zuller was 51.19 at 42 kilometres. Armstrong's gone through quicker than that there. Zuller, though, is the leader at the finishing line. 1:08.26. So, do you know, Paul, there's a real chance here. Now he's going to finish 2nd again to Lance Armstrong, and I'll make that the 4th time this tour.
Laurent Dufaux wanted to do a good ride here this afternoon, but he's not going to finish inside the top 20. He's well outside. The next man who's going to come up to the finish line is going to be Lance Armstrong. But I think, Phil, that Armstrong is cracking over the last 5Ks.
Well, this is how he's ridden his time trials. He's gone as fast as he possibly could. His legs have sold out a little bit. And in fact, the time checks are saying that there's not much between Zuller and Armstrong right now. There was a big gap at one stage, but you're right. Armstrong has slowed down, and Zuller, don't forget, still has the best time at the finish of 1:08.26. This is going to